Upon arrival, the three Israelis left the train station for the airport. They left for home to prepare for the operation. Mel and Kat rented a car and left for Tuscany. They wanted the documents in the hands of the Gens before anything could go wrong. Another day was too long to hold on to the lives of their friends and colleagues. Besides, neither one felt safe carrying them around Rome. Zoe and Ramous, on the other hand, spent the rest of the day sightseeing. They stopped in a little bistro for lunch. Mostly, they walked around while Zoe shopped. Ramous wondered if this was becoming a pattern. "These pants make my butt look too big. I can tell by the way you're looking at me. Tell me honestly, do they make my butt look too big?" "Sweetheart, you're as thin as a rail. There's not a pair of pants in this world that could make your butt look too big. Now, your feet are a different story." "What? What did you say? Did you say something?" "No. I was thinking of dinner. I said I'd like to have roast beef for dinner. That's all." "Oh. So you can stuff your face again? I saw you at that table in the rail car. I was wondering how one person could fit so much into one mouth. That was some excellent roast beef. I'm still hungry for more, and don't be rude." "I was kidding, Honorable. I heard what you said about my feet. You be nice." "Yes, dear." An hour later, they met the train when Mark and Dee arrived, and then rented a van to drive to Tuscany. Zoe filled Mark and Dee in on what took place on the trip from Madrid to Rome. Dee was excited. Dee said, "We could use the money to place everyone. It would go a long way in providing security, and better lives for the Gens at Tuscany." Zoe agreed. That evening, everyone gathered around the front of the hotel. Ramous and Mark built a bonfire about 2 hours before. Once the fire was established, Mark stood up and spoke. "My friends, tonight you will gain your freedom. I have a few things to mention. Through this act, we will recognize all our friends who died. We will consider this as a commitment to find those who are still missing, and we will consider this as establishing your freedom from governmental and corporate overlords." Everyone cheered and clapped. Then Mark said, "I'm going to ask Hart to come up and oversee the rest of this wake. He has been instrumental in getting you here. Without him, I wouldn't be looking at any of your beautiful faces. I'd only have visions of heartache in my mind, otherwise." "Thank you, Art." Art stood up to speak. "I have in my hands everyone's patent and birth certificate. Let me say this before we start. The U.S. Attorney General had every piece of information regarding us held by the U.S. Patent Office destroyed. These documents are the only physical representation of our past. Destroying this information means these documents can never be used to our detriment, ever again." Everyone cheered again. He went on, "Included in these documents are all the names of our friends who died over the past year. I will call their names as we burn their documents, but I don't want to wait another second, freeing those who are alive. So, I'll call the names of the living first. When your name is called, come up and take the documents from my hand and toss them into the fire. All of us will stand and watch it burn before I call the next name. After we all have burned our personal documents, we will then call out the names of our friends who are no longer with us, including all the first Gens." Zoe stood up and interrupted. "I'm going to tell you about a heroic act that took place while you were at the bay." Everyone expected her to mention the heroic actions of this person or that. Instead, while you were escaping from Guantanamo Bay, the first Gens started shooting the guards. In doing so, the first Gens sacrificed themselves so you could get away. When the guards turned to come after you, they caused them to turn away by throwing rocks and putting themselves between you and them. It's clear, you would not have escaped without them. I wanted everyone to know that. This was observed and told by an Israeli undercover agent, who was there at the time. In my mind, they will always be heroes. The sound of crackling fire was the only thing heard over the silence. Many tearful eyes sparkled against the broken light. Zoe joined the crowd as Art softly called names. Each Gen came up, took and tossed their patent and birth certificates into the fire. They were free. When Art finished calling all the second Gen names, he began calling the first. When he called the first name, Dania Blue, the crowd went crazy. Every name afterward was followed by loud cheers and clapping. They didn't finish until morning, just before the sun came up. Everyone went to their rooms and slept most of the day. When Art finished calling the first gens, he still had a stack of documents remaining. He did not call those names. When they looked at them, they realized the documents were patents and birth certificates for 93rd gens. Matthew joined them, to see if he could identify any of them. The next day, Sunday morning, the group got together for brunch. Zoe stretched and said, "I could get used to living here. I was also thinking that we need to purchase houses close to the airport, so we can have fast and easy access to the hangar." Mark said, "I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, but I think that's a matter for another time." "Okay, what I'm saying is that we need a place to stay while we're in Madrid." Silence. "All right, let's move on to the real issue at hand. If the IDF can get us through the gates of the compound, we should have no problem assaulting Hassat's office. My concern is the plane will not be on the runway. I'm thinking D and I can break into the office and safe, Mel, and Kat can go straight to the plane. I want to invite Art and another sharpshooter in case you two need them." Mel said, "We don't need them. Both of us are marksmen. We should be able to handle any tactical problems." "That's not the issue. You two will need to concentrate on other things, like getting into the plane and not getting shot while you're using your hands for other things." "I guess that makes sense. I'm sure Art has others on his team who could be useful." "Sounds good, Mel. Also, let's not get too confident. This appears to be a cakewalk, and too often, that can end up with the worst consequences. I don't want anyone to get hurt." Mel spoke with Art, and he agreed to join them. Since the group asked for 2 support personnel, he asked his number 2, Eric, to join them in the operation. The team was ready, so the group, over the next couple of days, spent their time talking with the other gens. Mel spent a lot of her time on the phone during that time. Kat asked, "Who are you talking to?" Mel hesitated until she asked again. "I'm talking to Aaron. He seems like a nice guy. Will you be moving to Israel?" "If anything, he will join us in Barcelona," she replied. Kat inquired, "Is it getting serious?" "Yes, I like him more than I have anyone before." "Good for you, hun, good for you," Kat said and walked away. After 2 days, the group, including Art and Eric, left for Madrid. They flew out Tuesday evening and arrived at the Israeli airbase early Wednesday morning. Aaron and several other high-ranking officers greeted them and invited into a soundproof conference room. As soon as they sat, 2 of the officers expressed their concerns about using American citizens in an Israeli covert operation. General Levitt was there and told them both to shut up as he smiled at the American citizens. Zoe explained to them once the IDF got them through the gates of the compound they could finish the mission from there. It wouldn't be a problem if they left before she and Dee assaulted Hassat's office. She told them their only concern was the Gulf Stream, and will it be on the tarmac? Aaron eased their concerns, having relayed and hearing back from Hassat that he would make sure it was there that day and prepped to go. The Israelis were still devising their plan to get Hassat and his family out of Beirut. That was an hour they will never get back. They planned to leave Friday at noon, and cross a fence into Lebanon at a secret location an hour later, where 2 vans would be waiting for them. They had 45 minutes to get to the compound once they were through the fence. Hassat will arrive in his family car, with his family, at 1:45 p.m. The IDF will fire 3 grenades just inside the compound. That should cause gate security to take cover while Hassat and his family get out of the car and meet up with the waiting IDF van. Once they're safe, the IDF will blow the gates, hit the weapons depot, and destroy the car at the same time. That's when the group will enter the compound as the IDF lays quick cover fire for them. If the IDF has learned anything about Hezbollah is when they're being shot at, they keep their heads down. No one wants to die for that organization. Zoe said, "It will take 30 seconds to reach Hassat's office, 4 minutes to subdue security, open and then empty the safe. I'll throw a grenade inside this time and close the safe store and run. There's no time to set a trap. From there, it will take another 20 seconds to reach the plane. Mel, Kat, Art, and Eric will secure the plane. Mel will start the engines and wait for us. Art, Eric, and Kat will lay cover fire for us as we make our way to the plane. Once we're in the plane, we will take off and land at the Israeli air base. The plan was acceptable to everyone. After the meeting, the general approached Zoe and asked her to feel just above his elbow. He told her not to say anything. She did as he asked. There was the indent. She looked at him and smiled. He said to her, "Leverage 261. The plan went off without a hitch. Hassat and his family were safe and on their way to Israel. Zoe and Dee opened, emptied, blew up the safe, and made their way to the plane. When Zoe and Dee got to the plane, Mel was not there. Kat was in the pilot's seat. Zoe asked in horror, "What happened to Mel?" Art answered, "There was a change in plans. She said she would meet us in Israel." Zoe assumed she was going back with the IDF. She was mad she didn't stick to the plan. There has been too much goofing off over the last year. Then she realized things weren't what they used to be. Mel and Kat were not under her supervision any longer. She knew if she changed the plan, it was because it was necessary. Art put the Gulf Stream in the air. It was a luxurious plane. Art came over the intercom. "On our right, you will observe the lovely Melissa poking her nose up to the glass." Zoe wondered what he was talking about until she looked out the portal and saw Mel sitting in the cockpit of an F-35 jet. She didn't catch sight of her for more than a few seconds when she dropped as an air-to-air missile flew above her. Zoe ran up to the cockpit. When she got there, Mel was explaining how the jet was without armament. She couldn't fight back. One of the Lebanese pilots saw her steal the F-35 and went after her. She could only take evasive actions. The F-16 pulled up alongside the Gulf Stream to see the pilot. Once he noticed it was not Hassat's pilot, he dropped back. Everyone in the cockpits knew he'd drop back and shoot the Gulf Stream out of the air. At the second he dropped back, there was a massive explosion. The F-16 went to pieces. They figured Mel had weapons on board, but that was not the case. Another F-35 pulled up alongside. A woman's voice came across the intercom, "Are you ladies all right, in one piece?" It was Arella. Zoe said, "Why, thank you for your service, Arella. Nice shot." "Thank you, but I'm in trouble for shooting down that F-16. We expected them to follow you, but we hoped to escort them rather than shoot them down. I guess it was for a good cause, eh?" Then she said, "I believe your friend is in the F-35. Are we going to have to negotiate for it? The brass will not like that." "Nah, you guys can have it. We have no place to store it, anyway." "Well, maybe we will ask a little something for it, but I doubt it," Zoe replied, laughing. They were relieved the Israeli Air Force had their backs. Art landed the Gulf Stream as planned. When they disembarked, they were ushered back into the same conference room. This time it was only General Levitt, waiting for them. "Good job, you guys. I'm confident you have work to do. How long before we benefit from this endeavor?" Zoe answered, "Give us a week. It will take us 2 days to figure out what we have. There's more treasure than we were initially told." He asked, "Can I call you in 2 days?" Zoe said yes and gave him the secure number. She explained how to leave a message and how to get a response. Then she said, "Use only a burner. Do not call on a company phone. You get 1 call per phone. Since we blew the safe up, there will be suspicious hackers. They will search for chatter about the contents of the safe. Some other national militaries and nosy covert hackers will listen to the airwaves and mysterious calls, particularly yours." Levitt responded, "We'll keep the chatter down." "All right. Now, it will take about a month before most get bored and accept the contents were destroyed, and 2 months before they all go back to sleep. Our biggest issue is the US, who's very good about picking information out of thin air. Our real problem we have is changing the ownership of all the assets. Everything we have that belonged to Holstein is still in his name. There are hackers around the world who monitor the assets of people like Holstein. They watch the transfer of those assets from one to another. When there are mass changes of ownership, they get suspicious. We don't want them getting suspicious. Levitt asked, "What do you suggest? How do we move the money and the assets without being found out?" First, we need to set up a corporation started by Holstein and move ownership of his assets to that corporation. In this case, because he owns several businesses and corporations already, it will be a consolidation of assets under a single corporation. That would be a normal activity by a paranoid schizo like Holstein. Then, we can pretend to kill Holstein and leave everything to the board of the new corporation. We'll put out rumors it was a disgruntled Palestinian terrorist group. No one will know who for sure. Fear of those kinds of groups is why we will keep the members of the board secret from the public. All his assets will go to the corporation. I would ask you, General, to make a way for us to set a corporation up here in Israel. That will drive many hostile characters mad and will appear Holstein is changing sides. I'll look into it, Zoe. Can it wait for a while? Can you operate under your current conditions? We may have an operation in the works that's much more exciting than this operation, and I don't want to close that door yet. I don't want to kill Holstein again, yet. I believe we can last for another year, maybe a little longer before we run into issues. Now, once we have cataloged everything from the safe, and distributed it, we will fly back and deliver your share. We will leave the Gulf Stream and any local assets here until we return. Can you have a C-130 available when we return? We can do that, and if you could provide me with a list, I'll have my people gather all the assets we agreed upon and place them into the C-130 and have it flown to you. Thank you for a job well done. We're fortunate to have friends like you. Ramous thought the general was about to ask them to do something else. He knew it was not the last time he'd call on them. Aaron was to join them on their trip back to Spain. He wasn't happy about the reason, but ordered to do so. However, it gave him and Melissa time together. He'd stay with them until they placed the money for Israel. On the way back to Madrid, they found almost $4 billion in offshore accounts. Holstein was worth over $40 billion. They didn't find any records showing other stashes, but they found he had almost $8 billion invested in banks in Germany and the US, along with a nasty letter about how Germany and the US were tying it all up. There was an accountant list in the files that listed 13 different companies and their net worth. Those added up to another $12 billion. He had another $11 billion in the central bank in Iran, valued in USD. The deeds and titles to other assets they retrieved added up to almost $3.5 billion. That included the F-16 and the F-35, which Israel was keeping the F-35. Poor Arella, she had no choice but to put the F-16 down. They already determined the money they would receive would go to help the Gens find new lives. They didn't need that much money and would discuss it before they were ready to distribute it. By the time they got back to Madrid, Zoe figured they walked away with almost $6.5 billion USD. They would return $2 billion to Israel. Whoever heard of that? They moved into the hangar in Madrid until they finished washing the money. The group moved all the money into a single Swiss account. Zoe figured that was the best way to keep other governments from asking questions. They made it look like the Israeli military was merging surplus operating funds. First, she moved all the money into 6 separate departmental accounts, and closed the original accounts. Once done, Zoe hacked the Swiss bank and wiped the original accounts as if they never existed and changed the deposit date of the 6 accounts to 10 months earlier. The next day she transferred all 6 accounts into a single account, on behalf of Israel, with the Swiss bank Unicredit, which had an office in Madrid. It was the general's and the prime minister's intention to keep their share available to its military without other cabinet officials trying to steal it for other purposes. After that, Zoe forged settlement papers for the purchase, by the Israel government, of a high-tech company called Meteor Technologies. If the paperwork looked legitimate, no one at the bank would question the purchase, even though the company never existed. Those funds from the sale went to a corporation called the Israel Financial Group. It was another dummy corporation created to hold the funds until they could be redistributed. Since the money came from Israel, and as long as Israel verifies the purchase and the payment to the Israel group, everyone was home free. Zoe gave Aaron all the information to access the $2 billion account with Unicredit. Israel was now $2 billion richer. Since no one but Holstein and Hassat knew of the assets, no one else would investigate the matter. Even though Iran knew there were valuables in the safe, they didn't have a clue what it amounted to. Now, the money was no longer traceable. Mel mentioned, no one in the Middle East trusts one another. I'm sure there are other billionaires in other countries hiding their assets, just like Holstein. Imagine if we could take all their money too. I'm sure Israel will back us. Aaron replied, I'm sure we would. Zoe handed Aaron the list of assets with original copies of the deeds and titles. Kat forged sales documents for all but wanted to wait until the corporation was set up to deliver the sales documents to any government entity. She wanted to put them all under corporate ownership. The hard part now was collecting all the physical assets, especially since they could use most of the properties and placing the gens. There were an additional 23 properties. One stood out to Mark and Dee, which was a property in St. Martin in the Caribbean. The rest were buildings, warehouses, and homes. Mel, Kat, and Art would fly back to Israel to pick up the other Gulfstream 3 and fly it back to Madrid. Mel wanted to spend time in Israel. They all agreed they didn't need her to resettle the gens. Perhaps this was her resettlement. Eric planned to go back to the vineyard to join the other gens. Before each went their separate way, the group met in the hangar office to discuss the status of the gens, and how the assets could help them. There were 2 full teams in the field and several other specialists elsewhere when the Seattle building was demolished. 4 specialists were hackers. They were the best the world offered. There wasn't a system they couldn't hack. Zoe wanted to use them to the gens' advantage. She told Eric to send them and Juliet back to Madrid when he got to the vineyard. Juliet was a team leader, and a banking expert used to infiltrate many of the more clandestine banks around the world. They hoped Julie could join them to monitor their accounts. Perhaps she might suggest how to invest those monies for maximum profit. They wanted to speak with her and get her input. Also, it depended on whether she was willing. Gens won't be forced to do anything again. Then Mark told Eric to send Carrie 43 back with them. Carrie had a photographic memory. If the group could convince the gens to work together using their skills to help and protect one another, they'd be a formidable force. As they were discussing their options and plans, an Israeli C-130 rolled up to the hangar. A young Israeli Air Force officer disembarked and entered the hangar. The officer said, "I am looking for a Mr. Mark Hatfield." "Hi, I'm Mark Hatfield, is the C-130 for us?" "Yes sir, it's full, can we unload it here?" "Let me see what you have. Then I can tell you where to put it." Once the rear hatch was open, Mark gasped. On the end were 2 luxury helicopters, one a Bell 525 and the other a Sikorsky S-92. The rest of the cargo included 13 luxury cars and 2 motor coaches. Mark said, "Put the helicopters in the hangar along with the motor coaches. Park the cars on the other side of the hangar. There's a small marked lot over there." Ramous was standing next to Mark while he was directing the placement of the vehicles. Ramous said, "I hope we have all the titles to these vehicles." Mark pulled a list from his shirt pocket and looked for serial numbers and identification on each and compared them to the list. After 20 minutes of comparing everything to the list, he said, "Yep, we have titles to everything on the plane." Mark asked the young officer, "This is only part of what was supposed to be delivered. What about the rest of the assets?" "Sir, everything that's not here is distributed throughout the world. We could only bring what we knew about in Lebanon and Syria. Retrieving this stuff caused at least 3 firefights. I'm sorry, I hadn't considered that. Thank you for delivering these to us." The C-130 left an hour later. Mel, Kat, Art, and Aaron just finished fueling and preparing the Gulfstream when Mark approached them. Mark said, "There are too many planes and other equipment to fit into one hangar. I found a larger hangar for sale owned by the Saudis. Aaron, please talk to the general and tell him we'd like to buy it, but we want to put it under ownership of the Israeli government, and then lease it from them for $5 a month. We could avoid a lot of issues if they would do that for us. Aaron said, you only needed to ask me, Mark. They assigned me to your group for those kinds of things. We understood as private citizens, you might have certain issues. Let me say Israel is happy to do as you suggest, but we will not pay for it. I didn't expect that. The price is 20 million. We can transfer the funds to your account today. Mark gave the phone number to the particular Saudi who was selling the hangar. He was selling the hangar because there was a death in the family and they were liquidating foreign assets. Aaron called the person responsible for selling the hangar and offered him full asking price. Things were going well between the Saudis and Israelis, so they completed the deal over the phone. The executor gave Aaron all the passcodes for the new hangar and told him he will fly into Israel and settle the day after next, which gave him and the others time to get back to Israel. Afterward, Ramous and Mark drove over to the new hangar. It was twice the size of the one they were already using, and it was modern, rich Saudi modern. Mark said, "This will do nicely." Then he turned to Ramous and asked, "I have noticed you have become quiet as of late. Are you all right, Ram? I've been observing. It's not like I was an international spy throughout my life and can jump into an operation without being a hindrance. I'm a simple police chief, or was. I did not understand what you guys go through living this life. I have been overwhelmed by Zoe's capabilities. She's amazing. For myself, I want to be more involved. I'm not a complete fumbling idiot, and I can be useful." "Yes, I understand and agree with you, Ramous. Everything has been happening so fast. It's even causing my head to spin. You have been so instrumental in bringing us to where we are today. If not for your efforts in the beginning, many of the Gens wouldn't be alive today." "Well, thank you, Mark. I hope I can be useful in the future. There's still a lot of work to do before everyone is safe. Do you have suggestions, Ram?" "You are on the right track after what I heard in the office before the C-130 arrived. You need to organize the Gens like a corporation. I don't believe a single Gen can live without the others. There's just too much expertise between them. You can't let that go to waste or allow them to become isolated. The group certainly has the necessary resources for organizing such an entity and they will always need each other." "Exactly, you're an insightful guy, Mr. Rignor." When the two got back to the first hangar, Aaron told them the second hangar was available for use. Eric came walking by as he was getting ready to leave for the train station when Mark stopped him. "You can fly a helicopter, right?" "Of course, we all can. Are you asking because you're going to let me fly back to the vineyard?" "You're too clever, young man. Yes. There's no need for you to spend a full day on the train when you can be there in a matter of 2 hours. Fuel up the 525 and take it. Then I want you to turn it over to Julie, Carrie, and the 4 hackers. Send them back as soon as you get there, okay?" Eric responded, "Right, thanks."